Very good afternoon and welcome to Awake TV from the Live Pulse News Studios. I'm Alan Taylor-Shearer.
And I'm Neil Foster.
Here we are again. It's Wednesday.
Today.
Yeah, confused you. We're not doing an Ant and Deck. We always sit the same way round. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of September. It's just after 5 p.m. here in the UK. I hope you're well wherever you are. What we got coming up, Neil?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. Every newspaper.
I'm even more afraid now because it was in the Mirror. The Sun says, I'm even more afraid. The Independent are really scared. The Times, what's that? The Fail, the Daily Fail. Oh no!
Yeah. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Are you scared?
You should be.
This is what the prostitutes are telling you. This is what the prostitutes are trying to push on everybody. The fact that we all have to be afraid, scared. Everybody is out to get us. I have to be aware of you, Neil, because as a foreigner, you might be a threat to my personal safety and security.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it takes a long time to behead anybody with a knife like that. I don't think you could actually do it. Oh, it's not that one.
No.
Yeah, here it is.
There it is.
Here it is.
Yeah.
You cannot cut somebody's head off with that.
He's got a bread knife.
You cannot cut somebody's head off with that. You need a very large axe, as you used to use in medieval times.
Yeah,
so you used to have to do it 2 or 3 times to get the head off.
That's right.
Yeah, but the hypocrisy is that they're introducing guillotines in America for executions now.
That's right. It's been passed. The law has been passed across federal law, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That any state now can use a guillotine to carry out the death sentence. So, whereas before it was lethal injection electrocution.
Electrocution, yeah.
Yeah. Well, now
it's obviously cheaper than bullets.
That's right. And now what you'll find is that on execution days in American prisons, there'll be lots of French people waving flags, singing, "Do you hear the people sing?"
And a nice platform.
Yes.
Then everybody can crowd around and
Everybody
throw
can
tomatoes.
come round and have a look. Yeah.
Throw tomatoes and rotten vegetables in general. Yeah. GM ones.
GM tomatoes, yeah. Genuinely worrying, medieval, and beyond a joke, really, to be honest.
Yeah, but this is barbaric, apparently, and guillotines aren't.
No, it's clean, it's humane.
But we were talking just before we came on air that if the mainstream media were against all this, they wouldn't be advertising it, would they?
No.
They wouldn't be advertising terror.
If they didn't want people scared, then the front page would not be carrying the same image.
This is giving in to terrorism.
It's giving them what they want, which is publicity.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another reason for it.
And that's exactly what we were told in the 70s and 80s. The only reason the IRA were doing what they were doing was because they wanted publicity. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they tried not to give them. The events were reported. But then we had this crazy situation where Margaret Thatcher stopped people being, we will
never give in to terrorism,
no.
we were told.
That's right. And you could sort of have some video of somebody like Jerry Adams, but it had to be voiced by an actor.
Yeah.
Because you weren't allowed to hear his voice or that kind of stuff.
Because what was said by an actor didn't mean the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
Was he speaking in a foreign language?
Well, no.
But I think they actually cleaned his voice up in many occasions so he could be clearly heard, rather than have this thick Northern Irish accent where nobody could understand what he said.
But now we're all busy friends because they've stopped doing all that.
Well, of course, Jerry Adams is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a sister organisation of the Royal Institute for International Affairs. So I wonder why he's a member of that. I wonder what that could possibly signify. Perhaps he's working for the other side.
No.
Allegedly, that could be the case.
Wow, that's a strong allegation, Neil.
Well, you don't, fight against the Queen and country and join an institute which has royal in the title.
No, you don't, do you? Not really.
And make speeches. Well, you have to be invited along to these things to join. So he's obviously taken up the big pay packet or something.
The offer's been given, and he's taken it up.
Yeah, that's why he's still alive.
I think you're right, actually.
I would suggest.
Because, many of his colleagues, compadres, were taken out a long time ago.
Well, it's funny, the only two that are alive end up running the Northern Irish government. And both were terrorists. Are terrorists.
And
allegedly.
claiming benefits, and they were doing all that, weren't they?
Yeah.
Anyway. Coming up later on in the show, we have part 3 of Clive de Carle's health.
I think he's still on about peptides.
Yes.
Following on from the
revolution.
The growing back of the thumb and legs. And
well, that was amazing. Check out pixie dust.
Be careful with that, because there is a narcotic known as pixie dust as well.
Right, okay.
So just be careful with that one.
Yeah, think about it.
You have to put in the word organ or thumb regrowth or something.
Renewal, organ regrowth, renewal or something like that. But the Americans called it pixie dust. The Russians have got another name for it, which involves peptides. So they talk about that one, and so that's part 3 that's coming up. Also later on we have a special report on the UK's Royal Navy and its latest vessels and the way that it's gearing up for future conflicts and the way that the budgetary cuts are hitting hard into the Royal Navy. And we went out yesterday and did a special report on that. So that's coming up.
Just in addition to this, I'm not sure if the story is even true.
The beheading?
Yeah. Of the next one's going to be a Brit. I'm not even sure if the whole thing is true. And if it is true, unfortunately, David Cameron has just signed a guy's death warrant.
Yeah.
By saying that the UK is considering fresh hostage rescue mission. Well, there's. I mean, if you're going to behead somebody and think, oh no, this guy's going to be rescued sometime in the near future, let's just do it now.
Yeah, just get rid.
And get the maximum publicity for it.
That's right. But they'll still send the troops in and
they'll stay, I would suggest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Obama said he's sending a load more into Iraq of these advisors. So they're ramping things up again, and we're talking about bombing again, and
invading, re-invading.
Re-invading.
Or did we ever leave?
No, we never left.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, it goes on. The terror threat as such.
That is an incredible
story. The case
story.
of 11 missing airliners in Libya. They've just gone missing. Islamic extremists apparently have captured 11 airlines and they've gone missing. So these Islamic extremists who have flown out from Birmingham and Watford or whatever to join a jihadist group can now fly jumbo jets apparently.
And they must have the technical know-how to disable all the tracking and all the
black boxes,
all the data recording.
Yeah, and they're just going to be invisible to radar apparently. These 11 jets when they take off.
I've heard about one of our dinosaurs going missing, but 11 aircraft.
Yeah, they just went poof.
Ping. Rather like Malaysian aircraft.
Alibaba's cave.
Yeah, but then you see Malaysian aircraft go missing as well, don't they?
Yeah.
And then maybe allegedly turn up later on over the Ukraine.
And go back to what we said about this possibly being a hoax story. I mean, even the headline in this Independent today, Stephen Sotloff beheading. British captive shown in this ISIS video which claims to show death of second... Claims to show.
So has nobody watched it then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it a real video? Is it, Hollywood special effects, do you think, maybe?
Because,
perhaps?
I mean, that could be anywhere.
Of course it could.
It could be anybody, anywhere, at any time. We've got no way of knowing. I mean, I'm no skilled video editor, but I know that you can hide so much in a video by some very, very simple basic editing.
Well, I'll just say, Alan, I've watched you film videos in here, and the backdrop is horrendous. And then you put that green screen on, and it's immaculate. And you're very basic compared to Hollywood, I would suggest.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Anybody who's seen the film Wag the Dog, that's just watch Wag the Dog and see how they set up a war in Albania and the footage they filmed in a studio.
That's exactly what CNN were doing back in the 90s with the first Iraq War.
Yeah.
It was all done in a studio.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could actually, I think it was one clip we actually saw the green screen, the keying went wrong.
That's right, the keying went wrong, and we've had that with Sandy Hook, allegedly. And then, even the Woolwich beheading.
Well,
Ole Demogorgon talks
beheading.
about that. Yeah, beheading. Ole Demogorgon talks about that, and I was reviewing it this morning. It was playing on 1800 online. And Ole talks about how the whole thing really does look like it was, all the vehicles are exactly the same kind of vehicles you would find on a movie set. And everything is really well contained. Once again, his opinion, the way he's read the images and the video.
Plus loads of actors, apparently.
Yes.
Stopping at things that weren't bus stops.
That's right. And
just carrying on, the narrative, this comes from, don't generally go to the alternative media for stuff I read on air, but this kind of...
Well, I do, you say, I normally...
Yeah. Well, I used to, but I'd like to use their own words kind of thing.
Yeah, quite
But this one, I mean, new terror narrative emerging. ISIS supports American resistance. So now they're comparing ISIS, or maniacs, beheaders, to people in Ferguson who are not happy that the people in the local community have just been shot dead for walking down the street. So now we're all terrorists. If you want to stand up for your rights, you are now a terrorist because you have no rights.
But we were included in that list of terrorists anyway, weren't we? Because we speak out against the government. Yeah, we speak out against government policy, etc., which makes you a terrorist.
Yeah. Well, by definition, if you don't vaccinate your child, then you're deemed a threat to public health, and therefore a terrorist. And
also, you must be abusing the kids as well. You know, neglecting them because you don't vaccinate.
Although I can't find any piece of legislation which stands up to that.
No, and you won't.
There is none.
No,
yeah,
you won't.
But there you go.
So coming up next then is Clive de Carle, part 3 of his peptide talk. Yeah, yes. Solutions, or Solutions Revolution.
Solutions Revolution, I think.
And then we'll be back after that, and then we'll be looking at the Royal Navy later on as well.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Solutions Revolution, and I'm delighted to have Phil Mycans back with us again. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Clive.
And we're going to be talking further on the subject of peptides, and one of the particular areas of the work on peptide I want to discuss is eyes. My background was ophthalmic optics, so it's something that's always interested me. So, macular degeneration, peptides.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to talk on these areas. And macular degeneration is a big problem today if you're an orthodox doctor, because the prescribed treatment for treating macular degeneration, first of all, we should say that there are 2 forms. There's a dry form, which means it's not bleeding yet, and then there's a wet form, which means it's now bleeding. Okay. Now, the standard protocol at the moment is there is nothing. If you walk in and you have your eye and they say this is a dry macular degeneration, they will do nothing whatsoever, because they will say what we have to do is wait until it starts bleeding and becomes the more severe form, and then we shall do something. Okay. And now, what do they do when you've now reached this late stage? And my analogy is always the car. You know, do you change the oil every year, or do you actually wait until there are noises inside the engine? And that's the kind of analogy I think we need to think about. And the sensible people, of course, change the oil and filter every year. So now you have a wet macular degeneration. Your eyesight is severely impeded. There's lots of things you can't see. There's whole parts of your vision that are obscured. It's like having a block in the middle, or whichever part of the retina it's affecting. The standard protocol is to inject your eyeball, which I cannot even begin to imagine is like. I can't imagine a needle going towards your eye. I think you'd probably want to blink, wouldn't you? They must stop you blinking, obviously. So they inject the eyeball about every 3 months with a certain drug. Now, I can tell you, because I run a pharmacy, that drug costs around £600. Okay, that's a cost. That's not the doctors or anyone else standing around you. Just to get that injection is about £600. They'll inject your eyeball every 3 months, and after 2 years of having this treatment, according to the published studies, you have a 50-50 chance of an improvement. Not a cure, not an eradication, just an improvement. So this is a pretty dire...
And if you don't improve, are you going to get worse? Is that a risk?
Worse. 50% are either going to stay the same or get worse.
Oh dear.
So it's not really very good news. So what options are in the literature, as it were? Well, a very interesting study was done in 2005, and it's been published in the New York Academy of Sciences, and it was done with a number of doctors, including a good dear friend of mine by the name of Walter Pierpaoli from Italy. And I think you've interviewed Walter, Clive, in your shows. And they used a combination of melatonin, zinc and selenium. And the melatonin is a hormone that's produced by the pineal gland, which is a very central gland in the brain. And we could do a whole show on melatonin, because it is one of the most remarkable anti-aging substances we have. I sincerely believe it is the anti-aging aspirin, because it has so many benefits and it is so few side effects and it is really cheap. So, but let's concentrate for the moment, because you asked the question on macular degeneration. What they did is they had 100 patients, and that was 110 eyes, because some people had macular degeneration in both eyes. And of course there was a mix of wet and dry. So they gave each of these individuals 3 milligrams of melatonin, which was combined with 50 milligrams of zinc and 50 micrograms of selenium. And they gave them every night. Now, it's important to take melatonin at night, and I'll be happy to elaborate on why that is in a moment. So what was the outcome? What they monitored them every month. They monitored them before, obviously, and had all these pictures. They're called fundus pictures, where you see the back of the eye and you can see the area that's affected. Very clear. You don't need to be highly trained to see which part of the eye is affected. And basically, they did it before, they did it at 1 month, they did it at 3 months, and they did it at 6 months. Can you believe at 3 months, something like 60 to 70% had no macular degeneration at all?
Wow.
And at 6 months, over 90% had no macular degeneration at all anymore. Okay, now that's incredible. And you think, well, what were the side effects? You know, what were the issues? Well, the side effects that patients reported were sleeping better at night, having more energy in the day, having less depression, more well-being. There were no negative. They're not really side effects, are they? I mean, they're good news, but they were listed as side effects. So there were no negative side effects in this study. And the cost of this treatment was more like £60 for the whole treatment, whereas, as I described to you, it would be £600 per injection, plus all the specialist staff.
It's incredible.
This is amazing, isn't it? Now, of course, they did rock back, and they were expecting some benefits. I mean, normally these studies are started with some hope, but they didn't expect such a dramatic improvement, and they didn't expect it in such a short period of time. And Dr. Pierre Pauly has made many, many, many studies in melatonin over many, many different diseases. And something very fundamental happens within the 3 months. And I think it's this. Melatonin is produced when we go to sleep at night. Our body, our pineal gland specifically, makes melatonin. It's the trigger. In fact, that's why we can be in a dark room, even in the middle of the day, and we all start feeling a bit drowsy. Or look at an aircraft at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the blinds are pulled down, everyone's sort of nodding off. Because once you get into a dark environment, the pineal starts saying, oh, it must be nighttime. So I start to produce melatonin. And although it's not a sleeping drug per se, it definitely puts the brain into a different mode, saying we're getting ready for sleep. And that's why it's important when you take a melatonin supplement to take it at bedtime. I should also state, little tip perhaps for people out there, if your bedroom has any light in it, so if your blinds are too thin for the street light, or if your partner is watching television or reading as you're sleeping, then you should wear a blindfold or get some new curtains, because any light in the bedroom entering the eye will destroy melatonin.
So even if the eyelids are shut?
Even if the eyelids are shut. If you can see light, because we all close our eyes and you can still see the light, then, now I should point out, it destroys endogenous melatonin, that is the natural melatonin that you make. It won't stop you if you take a supplement. That gets into the blood anyway. But it could be one of the reasons, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, take a look at your environment. Do you have a light in your bedroom? And I hasten to add that there's so many electrical, we shouldn't really have electrical things for other reasons in your bedroom anyway, but that's another story. But lots of things now have LEDs on. And if you look around the bedroom, you can probably spot about 5 or 6 LEDs flashing. You want to get rid of those as well. It's still light, still a light source. So have a dark bedroom. It's really important. If you can't, get a blindfold. Do it that way, if that's the way you have to do it. But what happens? So what happens with this supplement? What happens with melatonin? Melatonin is a trigger for the body to understand your circadian rhythms. Day and night, day and night, day and night. In fact, Walter Pierre Pauly has the rotational theory of aging, and he actually believes that the pineal is a counter. It actually knows how long you've lived, how many days and nights have you lived, which is why we have this incredible hurdle at 120 years. That so few people. I think at the moment there are 14 people on the planet who are older than 115. There's a real, but 120, you get handfuls of people that live past this. And he thinks it's this, but he thinks you can trick the pineal as well. You can slow down this rate as well. Of course, melatonin is very helpful with jet lag. It's very helpful with people on shift work, which is a very damaging process. If you're doing lots of nights, you don't want to be doing that for long periods of time. It really is I think we all know that. If you look at someone who's been doing shift work for 10 years, they look 10 years older than everybody else who doesn't. So, but melatonin is a real key. Now what happens is, if you get yourself back on this circadian rhythm, and we all shift for various reasons, so by taking a melatonin supplement at night, ideally between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., it puts you back on this circadian rhythm. When you're on the circadian rhythm, that's how your hormones know how to start working. You know, as hormones operate most operate in the morning, some in the afternoon, some in the evening, but it can't know until you're back on this day-night cycle. So it's melatonin that puts you on the day-night cycle, the circadian rhythm. Then you get hormonal cyclicity. Once you've achieved that, you get immunity. And most of Walter's work shows that this happens at 3 months. So I think it was no surprise then that if you understand that these patients, their immune system was back, their hormonal cyclicity was back, they fixed themselves, essentially. And that's why at 3 months, more than half the patients no longer, not slightly reduced, they didn't have any wet or dry macular degeneration.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely fantastic. The fact that I love about melatonin is the blind women fact that blind women hardly ever get cancer, if at all. And it's put down to the fact, this is blind women who just see black, put down to the fact that they have so much melatonin that never switches off. Yeah. So there's clearly a big anti-cancer link there.
And of course some religions, and they paint the red dot, and it symbolises the third eye. And if you go to your ears and you draw a sort of line there, and you draw a line there, that's exactly where your pineal is, in the middle of your brain. And it's been described by these ancient cultures as the third eye. And it's exposed, you know, it understands where, obviously through the eyes, but also through the top of the head as well. It understands when it's light and when it's dark. So it has this absolutely fundamental role. And I should also, a very fascinating point, maybe somebody will enjoy it, maybe somebody won't, but do you know what's in the actual middle of the pineal gland? Would you like to know?
I would like to know.
Water. Highly clustered water.
No.
Isn't that amazing? Something as simple as that is in the middle of this thing. So there's some really interesting, strange things going on, but it's a lot of focus now on the pineal as a master gland for aging. And a nice way to describe it, I tried to describe its hormonal cyclicity, but a nice way to describe it is with all the glands in our body, and when you think about them, they almost work on gravity. So the really important ones in the brain, and then down to the various, you know, whether it's the adrenals or the testes or the ovaries, etc. It's almost on a gravity type system. But I've lost my point.
We're talking about water in the centre of the pineal.
Thank you. Water in the centre of the pineal gland, and we'll have to cut this bit. I had a very important point to make there. Give me a second, guys. Sorry. Thanks very much, appreciate it. So the, what was the point I was going to make? It was good. Water in the pineal gland, and then the, conductor. Thank you. So you've got this third eye in the brain, the pineal gland, and what a lot of people describe it as, they describe it as the conductor of the orchestra. And I think that's a nice way to look at it, because you have all these other glands that are producing all these other hormones that are governed by the pineal and also the hypothalamus to a point. And you can see them as being parts of the orchestra. So here are the violinists, and you know, here are the cello players, and whatever way you'd like to look at it. And of course an orchestra can make noise, but as soon as it has a conductor, it makes music. And I think that's a nice way to think about the pineal gland.
Well, that's very interesting. And yeah, as you know, of course, there are two things primarily that are destroying our pineal glands: calcification and fluoridation. Yes. So the easy way to decalcify any part of your body, whether you're calcified with arthritis or calcified arteries or calcified pineal, is of course magnesium as the #1 calcium dissolver. And to get rid of fluoride,
absolutely,
boron,
absolutely,
and iodine.
Very, very good point, Clive, and well made, because you're absolutely right. And I do actually know that the pineal gland is particularly affected by fluoride.
Yep.
And that's a real. You're absolutely right. It's a real problem. There's another source, and it's radio waves.
Yep.
And we now know that all the wireless that are around us and everything. And I read somewhere something like in the last 30 years, 1 million-fold increase in radio waves activity around us. I mean, maybe that number's not right, but even if it's even 10% of that, it's a huge amount. And there are now studies clearly showing a decrease in melatonin for those people that are in these wireless environments. So again, affecting the pineal gland, leading to less melatonin production.
And I think the most dangerous place to get radio waves, particularly microwaves, would be in a train carriage, where there are 100 people all in one metal box, which is, what's a microwave? Metal box with a glass window. What's a train? Metal box with glass windows. And everybody's getting microwaved. Pretty nasty.
There's a lot of people now don't want smart meters fitted in their home as well.
Right.
That's another.
Never, never, never accept a smart meter in your home.
No,
never,
exactly.
never, never.
Exactly. There's another, if we talk about eyes and eye health, there's another interesting peptide, and really bizarrely, it's back to the Russians again, although this is a totally different Russian group. This is a group from Moscow. The other guys were from St. Petersburg. And they were challenged back in the 1990s. Now, actually, what I should say, this group, which is called the Helmholtz Eye Institute in Moscow, they gave the world cataract surgery. So this sort of production line of people that have these really quick operations. And cataract surgery has the honor of being the safest form of surgery in the world, which is fantastic until you realize that there's so many, I think in the States there's 27,000, something like that, surgeries every year. The problem being that a small percentage of them, which is less than 2%, which makes it the safest surgery, do develop other problems, including blindness. So although the risk is small, there is a risk to cataract surgery. There's another point about cataract surgery. Cataract surgery goes into the eye and it removes the natural lens, which has become clouded, opticified through glycation. Glycation, which is glycation is basically sugar, normally glucose, meeting protein and oxygen, and it becomes hardened, bound, and so it becomes less adaptable. And cataract actually is a Greek word meaning waterfall, so it's like trying to peer through a waterfall. So the older we are, the more likely we are to have a cataract, but of course conversely, if you're diabetic, you're likely, because it comes back, you'd have very high levels of sugar, and it's that glycation process that's taking place. But cataract surgery, of course, goes into the eye and removes the lens, and then replaces it with a plastic one. Now that plastic lens is fixed. So you're going to need glasses or contacts because you can't adjust your eyesight. You can't look down and then look up. You're fixed. So normally they'd normally go for, say, long vision, and then they give you glasses for short vision. So you're replacing a natural lens with a plastic one, which clearly doesn't have the range of use of a natural one. So that's not such a good thing. But of course, you are taking a risk by, even if it's a small risk, of complications. And the Russians also realized, these same chaps that gave us this process, so well, actually, if we look ahead into the future, and everybody knows this, the UN, there's going to be such a huge increase in older people over the next sort of 30, 40 years. I mean, the UN has said by 2050, there'll be 400% increase in those over 80. 400%. This is at a time when people under 15 might increase by 5%. Those over 65 will increase by over 200%. So there's going to be masses of senior people. And the Russians realized, well, that means masses of cataract, because you have something like a 50-50 chance of a cataract if you're over 60. And so they said, well, hang about, we won't have the numbers of surgeons. We can't even, to get all the, how on earth are we going to deal with this? So they started looking at the problem in a different way. And what they discovered is that the eye naturally uses what's called a dipeptide, and it's called carnosine, not to be confused with carnitine, which is a well-known supplement, but carnosine or L-carnosine, or if we want to get very specific, N-acetylcarnosine. But it is a dipeptide, it's natural, and it's found in food. It's found in meats, particularly in mussels and chickens and things like that. And it turns out that the eye uses this particular chemical to stop the opticification of the lens. So when you have naturally levels, the liquid around the lens is called the aqueous humor. So when this aqueous humor is containing carnosine, it protects the lens. So what they did is they made an eye drop up, which is called Can-C, and they apply the eye drop, just a regular eye drop, into the eye, 2 drops twice a day. And the studies have shown that if it's used over a 5 to 6 month period, there's a 90% of the people who use it have an improvement, and many of them have a complete regression of the cataract. There are a number that don't have any improvement, and I think what they've said is if people, and it's a typical problem, if you wait a long time, they refer to them as ripe cataracts, and they're normally a cataract that's been around for more than 10 years. They're very difficult to treat. And I think you'd probably accept that if any disease process is too late, it's very difficult to treat. But if you catch it fairly early, and the earlier you catch it, you can get very, very good results. So imagine you can use an eye drop twice a day for a few months and eradicate a cataract without having any surgery.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Isn't that incredible? I wonder how many people actually know that. But interestingly, it's Russian research.
And is vitamin C part of the protocol alongside that?
Absolutely. Vitamin is ubiquitous, isn't it? There's virtually nothing you can't use vitamin C for. By the way, how do you know if you've got the right level of vitamin C in your body? Because obviously, unless you've got a cancer or something where you'd want to, obviously you wouldn't. But if you take too much vitamin C, you might get stomach cramps, you might get diarrhea, and it's not a pleasant experience. Now, if you've got cancer, you might think, well, I'm not worried about that. But if you're just a normal Joe trying to protect themselves, that might be too much. So how do you know you're getting enough vitamin C without having to find out by the side effects? And there's a very simple thing. They're quite nice, they're very cheap, and they're called Vita C strips. And they might be like 20 pence each or something like that. Maybe even a bit less when I think about it, because I'm thinking in dollars at the moment. And basically, you urinate on them. And they change colour, and you just put the colour band to the thing. As long as they stay green, you've got good levels of vitamin C. So you could use one in the morning and one in the evening, and if they remain green, you know you've got the right level of vitamin C. So that's a nice, simple, easy
very
way.
good, very good, very useful.
Thank you. And so the Can-C is very good, and we've got the melatonin for the macular degeneration. Perhaps mention another peptide, as we're on the peptide talk, that has come from the work of Walter Pierre-Pauli again, and it's called TRH, and to remember these ridiculously long names in my business, but thyroid releasing hormone is its official title. And he's finding that this is another, like melatonin, another master hormone. In fact, his comment is it's a life-generating molecule, that it came out of the swamps. And when you think about it, molecules have not adapted, but the uses to which they're put have adapted. That's the difference. And he made a comment to me some years ago. TRH is a very unstable molecule. Okay, as a supplement, it's a very difficult product to use. It can be used sublingually, but because of its instability, you can't be quite sure. And I was lamenting this with him. I said, it's an unstable molecule. It's how we. I'm looking at it from a pharmacological perspective. How do we get it to be stable and all this sort of thing? And he said to me, but Phil, that's what we want. He said, because instability is adaptability. Now that might not mean to, but that was like a light bulb going off in me. I was like, whoa, absolutely. So we're sort of criticizing it and then realizing that this is the thing that life is adapting, because it can be changed. But TRH, what he's been showing, and this is very, very new work, by the way, because this hasn't been widely published, but it has a number of very beneficial effects. But perhaps the most interesting effect of all is it's increasing the number of insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. Wow. Now, what does that mean? Well, that could mean that we might be able to get even type 1 diabetics off insulin.
Well, as a type 1 diabetic, I approached Walter Pierre-Pauli to talk to him specifically about TRH and secondly melatonin,
Yes.
Just for
of course,
personal reasons.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So there's some great work going on, and hopefully there's going to be more published about that. We know, it, by the way, it also it helps the kidney cells, it helps liver cells. In mice, because most of this work, you understand at the moment, has been done in animals, it's just moving into the human field. But in mice, it dramatically increases spermagenesis in the male mouse. So again, very useful for any man who's got fertility problems. So and it's one of those things that pharma have a big problem with because they don't really like molecules, the same molecule that has so many different uses.
Well, they can't patent it, obviously.
They can't patent it. They like a one problem, one molecule solution.
Yes.
But with water, as he said, these are life-generating molecules, so naturally they can be adapted to many different things. So I hope we've given, for the viewers, some background into these different peptides and some of the incredible applications that they can be put to.
Well, that's amazing. So thank you very much, Phil, once again.
Welcome.
Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.
Well, we were just looking at the next story, and it's very appropriate because we've just had Clive DeCarle talking about health, peptides, and regeneration, and how you can improve your health. And here we've got an example of health being
miraculous. Really.
Yeah,
this,
absolutely.
Ebola with a 90% death rate. Apparently, yesterday I read it was 50-50 now.
Okay.
It keeps going down and down and down and down. But the British Ebola patient Will Pooley, discharged from hospital, made a miraculous recovery.
That's it. Well, I'm genuinely pleased that he's better.
Yeah, if he was ever ill in the first place, I would suggest possibly not. Volunteer nurse has been receiving treatment at Royal Free Hospital in North London after contracting virus in Sierra Leone. It's just down the road from us. We're lucky we didn't catch it. Will Pooley,
still time.
Yeah, the first British person to contract the deadly Ebola virus, as if that makes any difference whether he's British or not, has been discharged from hospital in London, a spokesman said on Wednesday today.
Okay.
So he could be on his way here to do an interview and explain his miraculous recovery. Are you going to stay in the studio with him?
No, you're
Rubbing
fine.
shoulders.
No,
Yeah.
you're fine. You're fine.
The 29-year-old volunteer nurse has been receiving treatment at the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead, London, since being flown back to Britain from Sierra Leone on an RAF plane 10 days ago. It's great. The military flies you back these days.
Yeah, you get your own massive transporter all to
Yeah,
yourself.
imagine you lose your passport when you're on holiday. You think you're going to get much help?
I don't think you need a passport to get on that plane.
No. Pooley contracted the virus after 5 weeks volunteering at a clinic in Kanima, where he was helping to treat patients with Ebola. It's so virulent, is that the word? It took him 5 weeks to get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know.
He was being treated at the Royal Free Hospital's isolation unit. Well, he was actually wheeled in and he was allowed to walk through the hospitals, from what I heard, where he received the experimental drug ZMapp, which has proved effective in tests on monkeys, but has not yet been subject to trials on humans. Well, obviously it has.
Clearly it has,
Clearly
if this is the case.
The other doctors taken back to America, they got the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think somebody was flown to Germany as well.
That's right.
The same thing.
And the American made an amazing recovery.
Yeah, and obviously there's many happy monkeys these days.
Yeah. I wonder what ZMAP's made of. I wonder if it's just like, shed loads of vitamin C.
Yeah, they said they were making it out of monkeys. So, well, there you go. But anyway, he's made a miraculous recovery and he's all fit and well. So the question is, why aren't they giving this to people in Africa?
Yeah, why aren't they using that RAF plane to fly tons and tons and tons of ZMAP out to Africa?
Yeah, they say they haven't got enough of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, why don't they fly what they have got?
So just the hypothetical situation now, let's say David Cameron goes on a fact-finding mission and accidentally...
Sierra Leone?
Yeah.
It shakes hands with somebody.
Accidentally brushes against somebody and their sweat mingles. I wonder if he'd get ZMAP.
I'd suggest he's possibly already had it if he's going to go there.
Yeah.
Or something
something
even better.
Something very similar, maybe.
Anyway, his father Robin said on Monday that Pooley was doing pretty well. Well, I reckon if you got Ebola and you've recovered, you're doing pretty well.
You're doing pretty well, oh yeah.
After his admission, Dr. Michael Jacobs, Clinical Director of Infectious Diseases at the Royal Free, described Pooley as a resilient and remarkable young man. Yep. At a press conference on 26 August, Jacobs said it would take a week for there to be more clarity around Pooley's prognosis. So they waited a week and said, on you go.
Yeah, it's fine
no
now.
problem. Yeah.
Off you go, fella.
But what I believe, this is a 21-day gestation period, possibly.
Yes. Yeah.
And possibly even longer. So he still could have the virus in his system.
See, the original virus it was a few days in incubation. And then it died off. This 21 days, and you've still got it. So you've got time to spread it and share.
The Ebola virus, which is spreading across West Africa, has claimed more than 1,500 lives. It was only 1,000 a few days ago, so I think they're exaggerating. And infected more than 3,000 people. So there's only 3,000 people infected
That's according to the WHO.
Yeah. So they're telling us that they don't have 3,000 doses of this stuff.
No, it's far too expensive. They couldn't possibly.
It's too expensive for Africans.
Too expensive for people with brown skin. Yeah, that's what it is.
According to the WHO, which has said as many as 20,000 people could be infected before the outbreak is contained.
So they're going to let 20,000
They
get
can
it.
contain 20,000, but they can't contain 3. Half of whom are dead. So there's only 1,500.
Right.
At
So,
the
but they
moment.
can't contain that. But 20,000.
20,000, not a problem.
Is that because maybe there's one big camp that's all set up ready to take about 20,000?
Yeah, well, that was in the film Outbreak, wasn't it? When they came over and just bombed the camp.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a way forward.
final solution.
Population control
The
as well.
final solution,
The
yeah.
final solution.
Yeah. So anyway, Mr. Cooley's all fine and dandy now.
Which I'm genuinely pleased about. If he was ill and he's
If he was
recovered,
ill,
that's brilliant.
I think that's a capital I on that, in my humble opinion. But anyway, he's lucky he wasn't in Holland.
No, and it's a good job he's only 29 and not 79.
Because in Holland these days, it's just too much bother to put you in a care home now if you're a bit unhappy.
It's far too expensive as well.
And
it
they
makes
will
very
bump
sad.
you off if the doctors decide you're a bit unhappy.
God.
Now, I've been a bit unhappy today
Yes.
for various reasons.
Yeah.
And I'm 51, so I'm kind of maybe borderline.
You're on the brink.
I'm over the 50 mark. I'm in danger. I mean, if I ever go to holiday in Holland and
Don't get ill.
I get into kind of a little kind of morose moment with somebody, and there's a doctor sitting there, maybe just go, jab, there you go, mate. You'll be fine in the morning.
You'll not be
No more worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, now a Dutch doctor kills patient to spare her from living in a care home. Case is first referred to prosecutors since euthanasia was legalised in Holland 12 years ago. Unidentified woman died by lethal injection, didn't even know who she was, at the Life End Clinic after a stroke. Doctors concluded unhappiness of women constituted unbearable suffering.
So because she was unhappy.
Regional Review Committee found doctor was neglect. He's going to walk behind us, isn't he? Was neglect and case referred. Life End Clinic established in The Hague in 2012 to provide euthanasia to patients. It's helped 250 patients to die.
Oh, that's helping.
It's
That's
very helpful, yeah.
It's been helpful.
In the past 2 years, 125 people a year.
Bloody hell.
It's 10 a month, eh?
Sorry, I shouldn't swear, but it's beyond the pale.
In the past 2 years, and it has mobile doctors. Well, I'd hope they're mobile.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No.
But that's the kind of thing that they have in China.
Do
with
they have
their-
doctors in comas?
Possibly.
They're immobile doctors. Maybe they should be put down. UK politicians warned not to legalise assisted suicide after the Dutch experiment. So it's just a big experiment.
Are the Dutch in the EU?
Yes.
So anything that applies to one member state applies to all of them?
Yes, absolutely correct. Standardisation. So this is why people from the UK can go to Holland and get themselves bumped off.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
dignitas, isn't it?
I wonder if they fly Ryanair, because that's enough to want you to commit suicide anyway.
Blimey. Or EasyJet.
Or EasyJet, yeah. Anyway, a Dutch euthanasia doctor killed a woman. Like, killed. He didn't euthanize, he killed
Not
her.
euthanized,
I mean,
not...
if somebody kills you, that's murder. isn't
Yes.
it? A woman in her late 80s because she did not want to live in a nursing home. It doesn't. She might have wanted to live at home.
Yeah. I don't particularly want to live in a nursing home when I'm older, but
No.
I'm certainly not looking forward to this doctor coming along.
I mean, the unidentified woman died by lethal injection. Now, they've already told us lethal injection doesn't work, and that's why in America they've introduced guillotines.
That's right.
So, I mean, we're going to see
Maybe they-
guillotines on street corners.
Yeah.
You know, Jeremy Paxman would love that, wouldn't he?
Maybe every old people's home should have a guillotine.
Yeah, I mean, she was sent to a Life End clinic after she complained she did not want to spend the rest of her life in a care home. So she goes, I don't want to go in a care home. Oh,
No.
Lethal injection.
There's only one solution then, love,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
the final solution.
Yeah, so I mean, we move on from there. This is in I think it's the Times. Yep, the Times.
Yes.
Old people going into care homes only as a last resort.
But I thought death was the last resort.
Well, it used to be.
Okay.
It's not anymore. Care homes are worse than being murdered.
Still.
Yeah. Because care homes cost money.
That's right.
And let's face it, a lethal injection, bish bosh,
very cheap.
good night.
Yeah. How much is bleach these days?
Well, yeah.
Doesn't even have to be a chemical, does it? Just air.
If she had AIDS or Ebola, the bleach would cure her.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
Killer cure.
Or there's this very dangerous high dose vitamin C.
Yeah,
vitamin C. That's an absolute.
Dodgy.
Yeah.
That's dodgy.
If anybody was going to die, it'd be that'd do it.
Yeah, death by orange.
Yeah. Death by Jaffa.
Yeah. Okay, and sticking with the needle.
Yes.
Revolutionary vaccine to spare millions.
Very good. I see what you did there. Sticking with the needle.
Yes, sticking with the needle.
Okay.
Okay. Millions could be spared the torment of cat allergies by a revolutionary vaccine, its backers claimed yesterday.
Are you tormented by cats?
Now, we're told that we have to have human diploid cells.
Human diploid cells,
diploid cells, monkey kidneys or whatever.
Monkey kidneys,
bits of this and that in the vaccine.
Chicken embryos.
There's going to be cats in this one.
Oh.
I mean, you've already got whiskers.
Have I been injected by this cat vaccine?
When administered to the pet, it lowers the level of a protein in its saliva, which is a main source of the allergen. So it's good for cats.
Okay.
Hypocat.
Well, that's original.
Hypo. Yeah. Or hypodermic.
Yeah.
Has already passed proof of concept trials and is tipped to be on the market within 4 years. Proof of concept.
Now, is this something that you get from the vet, or can you just walk into your local pet shop and...
Proof of concept means the theory has been proven. Well, there's not been a vaccine theory proven yet.
No, not one.
So this is the first, obviously. 1 in 10 people is thought to suffer the telltale running noses, sore eyes and asthma attacks. Worldwide, the market for the vaccine is thought to be worth £250 million. The product was announced in a £7.9 million deal between animal health specialist Benchmark Holdings and Swift firm Hypopet. Allergy UK Clinical Director Maureen Jenkins said, "It sounds like an excellent idea. That doesn't mean it is."
You know, if you've got a cat allergy, you just stay away from cats.
You don't have a cat.
Don't have a cat.
All allergies are caused by a protein, and in cats, this protein is a very sticky molecule in their saliva. Well, don't let them lick your face.
Don't let them lick you, no.
They preen themselves and it sticks to their fur and skin. And as they shed fur and skin cells, the molecule tends to stick to walls, clothing, shoes and public places. Well, get rid of the cat.
Yes,
as you say.
don't have a cat.
Send it to Holland. Because you don't want to put it at home.
No, definitely not. Because it wouldn't be happy.
It wouldn't be happy. It's very... It's very difficult to remove and can linger for up to a year, causing asthma, allergic rhinitis and eczema in people suffering from the allergy. In some cases, the reaction can be quite bad, causing a really bad asthma attack. Now, if anybody who has a child who has asthma is not going to have a cat.
No, I've got a cat. I've got a child with asthma and I've got a cat there.
Hypocat is to be developed by Benchmark in Braintree, Essex and Edinburgh. Edinburgh's where just outside Edinburgh, the Dolly the sheep.
You're not allowed to give blood in Edinburgh.
Well, actually, I wasn't allowed to give blood in Edinburgh many years ago because it was regarded as the AIDS capital of the world.
Which automatically assumes that you must have it as well.
Yeah, and then they brought out Trainspotting, which was actually filmed in, part of it was filmed in Edinburgh, most of it was filmed in Glasgow, and it gave Edinburgh that well-being, that perception that Edinburgh was indeed full of drug addicts, whereas every other city in Britain was full of drug addicts who come out of toilets or go down toilets or whatever. Yeah, I never saw that happen in all my years in Edinburgh.
I've visited Edinburgh a lot. I've never seen that done.
Rehoming charity Cats Protection said relinquishment of cats for allergy reasons is certainly a problem for us. What does that mean?
One would hope, right, that it's somebody doesn't realise they've got the allergy. They go and get a cat, discover they've got it, and then want to give it somewhere to live.
Achoo!
However, now on a more serious note, this one.
Cats aside.
Cats aside now.
Okay, this is the father of Asha King, the child who was taken to Spain.
Yes.
For this family to give them the treatment they required. They were going to pay for it themselves. The NHS said they couldn't give it because it's too expensive.
That's right.
So this family doing the right thing by their child.
Although the NHS do send children to get this treatment
for eyes,
for eye conditions.
Yeah, but so it's okay for eye, because not for cancer.
That's right.
Okay, right. They were going to kill him, Asha's father reveals, after release from prison.
Wow.
So basically, he knew that if they gave the child chemotherapy, it was going to kill him. So they chose to do the right thing with the child, take him to Spain, try to get the treatment, but instead we have, shall we call them overzealous and be polite? Because we're not going to swear on here.
No, definitely not. But yes, overzealous is a good phrase.
Yeah, fanatics. We could call
Oh
it
no,
extremists.
no, not fanatics and extremists, because they're Westerners.
But they've terrorised,
Westerners aren't fanatical.
his family.
Some strong words there, Neil.
So yeah, he obviously knows that the health service, shall I call it,
Yeah, it's not a service
in
anymore.
Britain is are murderers. That's all there is to say.
It used to be a service. When Bevin set it up, it was a service, and it was supposed to protect those who find themselves in hard times and help them out and get them back to health. A safety net, but not anymore. Failure to join up medical records is a health risk. So this is the care.data situation.
Which was delayed 6 months.
Yes.
We're now getting to that threshold of that 6 month period.
And those of you like myself that opted out.
Well, you can't opt out really. You can only opt out for certain things, but there's certain things that are going to be handed over, and that's it.
And this is this is about all our medical records being sold off to the highest bidder.
But it's not just your medical records; it's your genealogy, your body mass index, which they'll claim is a medical thing, but we're all different sizes and shapes.
Yeah, I've never been small.
Your smoking habits, your eating habits, your drinking habits.
Of course, if you've got a loyalty card, all that stuff is added onto your profile. And
it's all going to be given to insurance companies. Private medical insurance will come in eventually because
sales
the NHS
marketing
is collapsing.
And
when you go to the doctor to be treated for whatever it is, they'll look up your record and say, I'm sorry, but you've been buying biscuits and alcohol for the last 6 months. I'm not treating you.
That's right, because you're too fat and you're a drunkard.
Yeah. Even if you're buying that for somebody else.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is...
Pay cash, folks.
Yeah, and don't have a loyalty card.
Yeah, pay cash. While you've got it.
It's just...
It doesn't mention care.data in here,
no,
but that's where it's going again.
That's it. We thought that somebody had seen sense and had actually reversed that thing. Well, no, it was just paused, and here we are again. They're coming back to cream all our data, gather it all in, and then sell it on to the highest bidders. And it's not just one set. It's all going to be held by Atos.
Atos, yeah.
It's all going to be
company responsible for the murder of 10,600 people, allegedly.
And the other thing that they do is, I'm going to head to the Daily Telegraph business pages, not somewhere where I normally frequent, but this story on the front page is about the 3.7 gigawatts of power generation capacity that has been taken offline that they're going to have to reinstate so that we don't have power cuts all over the place. Although it's okay for people in Iraq and across the Middle East to have to rely on generators, but not us here in the West. No. And all these most of these power stations were shut down because they weren't environmentally friendly. But we were talking about Atos and smart meters.
Smart meters. Atos, the biggest supplier of smart meter technology on the planet.
I did not know that.
Neither did Natalie Bennett.
Interesting. But
she's all for smart meters.
Yeah. But not Atos.
Well, she doesn't like Atos in some respects, but she loves them in others.
Right.
If they're irradiating you with cancer from smart meters, she's fine with that.
That's fine. That's all right. So smart metering services then, this is just a piece about shares. Shares in companies that install smart gas and electricity meters for industry look like a solid bet as they provide steady revenue and dividend income. So it's all about profit, no interest at all.
Of course, I've got an article here about they're going to start turning off businesses to save electricity, to ration. I actually mentioned the word rationing. So they're going to ration electricity for businesses.
The R word.
They did, yeah. And that's exactly what smart meters will facilitate.
Because it can be switched off remotely. Yeah. You've used up your allotted ration.
And as you mentioned, loyalty cards before, smart cards will come in. Your electricity ration will be on there, your carbon credits. If you overstep your ration for that month, you won't be able to buy anything.
Well, the
food, nothing.
The prepay meters that people get now if they fall behind with their bills, that's all on a card.
Yeah.
That's all on a key card which has got a chip in it. So you go down there, and at the moment you hand over some money and they credit
That's
it to your
unlimited.
card.
You can put on it what you want
You
to put
can
on
put
it.
any amount on it you want.
That'll
However,
change.
yeah, time's going to come when you'll be limited about how much you can put on there. And once you've
But, well, they won't term it in terms of money because obviously the money will change as we keep putting the prices up. They'll say it's so many kilowatts.
it'll be
per month.
units and kilowatts that you're allowed, and you won't be able to roll them over because that
Not
would
at all.
that would not be
You
sustainable.
can't save them up.
No.
No.
Whilst we're on the subject of energy, the promise of discovery makes Falkland oil and gas a risk worth taking. Now, they say here that Falkland Oil, which is the company that is dealing with everything down there, the shares have jumped almost 10% over the past 2 days as investors focus on the potential of a major oil discovery from a fresh drilling campaign set to begin in the first half of next year. Well, I know for a fact
Potential.
that, yeah. I know for a fact that in the year 2000, the vast majority of the oil wells and gas wells down around the Falklands and in the seas around that have been drilled, tapped, and are just sitting there ready and waiting for when the Middle East dries up.
They've been capped.
Yes.
They're already done.
It's all there. It's been capped. It's been just sat ready, and then we will become the major oil trading company. Company, effectively country via the Falklands, which is why we fought a war back in the 1980s for it. Which is why we maintain a huge garrison down there of Navy, Army, Air Force. The place is bristling, and that's why the Argentinians want the place back, because of the mineral wealth. Because as always, it's about banks and mineral wealth. Yeah, I think that was it. Because the back page of this, whilst it looks like an article, is just an advert for a mobile phone. Oh, there was her as well, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah.
Dame Vivian Westwood.
Who was notorious in the 70s for punk fashions and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And hanging out
with a chaos hat. You probably can't see that.
It's funny, it's a green chaos hat. Isn't
Green chaos.
it? Yeah.
So she's thinking about the environment.
Yeah.
She's concerned and wants to maintain her green credentials, which means she's given £1 million of her own money. She's invested it in the Trillion Fund. This is a crowdfunding platform that lets armchair investors support renewable energy projects. All sounds really good about the
She's on a
environment.
bicycle.
She's on a bicycle. She's got a green chaos hat on. She's doing her bit. However, the fund will allow people to invest in wind and solar projects across the globe. Well, we know that that's pointless because they don't work onto these massive scales. Returns, this is the important bit now, returns vary according to the size and risk of projects, but average interest rates will stand at 6 to 7%.
Not a bad return.
No, Trillion Fund will use Dame Vivian's cash to boost awareness of the projects it supports. It's raised £2 million in growth capital to date from a consortium of investors, and this will raise £5 million by the end of the year. I would suspect they're going to get at least 3 or 4 times that back, because obviously the government will back this and they'll pump some money in, which means these investors will get more than their 7%.
They've obviously
back.
guaranteed that this kind of stuff's going to go ahead in the first place.
Yeah, because you wouldn't get consortiums and investing and all that kind of stuff in it.
And nobody shares shoot up 10% overnight on the potential. Or maybe just there might be oil there.
Could be. Let's be philanthropists, and let's see if we can help people. No. We get 7% back. Failure to report fraud may become a crime. Now you spotted this. While I was looking at that, you spotted that.
Yeah, well, it's always been a crime not to report fraud where you see it or whatever. And why aren't we all down our local MPs? The EU's committing fraud. They haven't submitted accounts for 18 years.
That's right. 18 years and they've not submitted accounts. Unbelievable.
So,
and they just get away with it.
So it's supposed to be a crime not to do that, so let's all head down and report it immediately.
So this brief report here says companies could be prosecuted if they fail to report fraud and money laundering to authorities. Under plans being looked at by the government, Jeremy Wright, the Attorney General, told the Cambridge International Symposium on Economic Crime that, quote, officials are considering proposals for the creation of an offence of a corporate failure to report economic crime. So failure to report crime.
What's austerity? Would that be an economic crime
That's
on
an
us all?
economic crime, yeah.
Yeah.
On anybody and everybody.
Yeah, what about George Osborne crashing our economy and people like that? George Soros, perhaps, crashing the Bank of England. Isn't that an economic crime?
That was his stated aim, wasn't it?
He
Destroy the Bank of England.
He bragged about it. So there's an economic crime.
Because the vast majority of the world's economy is controlled from that square mile in the centre of London, which is its own independent state.
Its own police force.
Yes, its own police force, its own bylaws. Anything that happens in the EU doesn't apply to the City of London because it's not in the EU.
We could also cite any of these so-called green environmental movements who are defrauding the public of vast amounts of money.
With unelected people.
This hoax of global warming and fraudulent science, and all getting massive grants for it. That's economic crime.
I wonder how much Natalie Bennett gets paid for being the unelected leader of the Green Party.
Well, she was elected by the Green Party to be the leader of the Green Party.
Yeah, but
she's not been elected to do anything.
No, she's not been elected
Ever.
to sit anywhere or do anything.
Ever. No political position whatsoever by any member of the public.
Well, we've been looking at a selection. Go on, Neil.
No, I'm done really. I've got stuff here. I had stuff about the blackouts here coming. Blackouts coming. It's in here somewhere. That's to do with the radio.
Well, we've got...
This is a nice tale. This is back in November the 11th, 2011. Interesting article. The entire humanity must be reprogrammed.
Oh, can I...
It's quite good, that.
Can I have a quick look at that? I'll not read it out.
You can do it on the news if you want.
Thank you.
Or yours. Sure.
Great stuff.
So anyway, the Scottish independence thing, I just saw the thing in there.
Yes.
That if Scotland votes yes, they can't have the pound. But of course, Alex Salmond's already stated that he will sign up to the European Union the day after independence. So we've been fighting since 1745 or whatever it was to get independence, and within 24 hours, it's over.
That's it. So you'll have your independence, have a big party for about 23 hours and 59 minutes,
Actually,
and then...
Yeah, it actually states in that one of the articles I've got here that what Scotland have to do is set up a central bank. Oh, surprise, surprise.
Why would they do that?
Well, the only reason you do that is if you had your own currency. But they ain't going to have their own currency.
No,
they're going to have
euro.
a pig and a poke.
Yeah.
Or the poke and a pig, whatever. Economic fraud. Let's report that crime.
Best report it.
Yeah.
Who are you going to report it to then,
Ghostbusters. For all the good that'll do.
Well, Scottish independence obviously is going to have an impact on the defence of the country, and one of the branches of the military that's concerned with Scottish independence and the financing, etc., is the Royal Navy. Now, the Royal Navy has been under a lot of financial pressure recently, and obviously with the continued war crimes that are going on in the Middle East, the Royal Navy is going to be involved in that for a very long time. And obviously investment and obviously the amount of equipment and facilities that are up in Scotland are all going to be impacted negatively by any referendum that says yes and Scotland breaks away. Now, yesterday I went out and had a look at some of the new ships that are coming online for the Royal Navy, and here's my report. A former First Sea Lord has launched a scathing attack on Prime Minister David Cameron on the overstretched commitment to a military response to the situation in Iraq with the Islamic State forces. A response to the IS in Iraq and the deep damaging cuts to the Royal Navy. On Iraq, he said Britain risks taking the dangerous step of being dragged further into a military action in Iraq. The retired First Sea Lord cautioned ministers to properly think out any attack against Islamist jihadists who have spread a reign of terror over huge parts of northern Iraq. Lord West of Spithead, a former First Sea Lord, spoke out after David Cameron said Britain would use all the assets that we have. including military prowess and aid, to defeat the Islamic State extremists. He's also commented on spending, saying, quote, "The government's cuts to the Royal Navy's fleet have gone too far and are a national disgrace." Lord West said the coalition had not just cut to the bone, but into the bone, as he insisted the UK has been left with too few ships to escort naval convoys. The Labour peer also warned the possibility of Scottish independence poses the greatest security and defence threat to the UK. It's now that I've taken a tour of the most up-to-date addition to the Royal Navy's fleet, HMS Eden, and we've been surprised at the agility and impressiveness of this first of the austerity-class vessels. Alan Taylor-Shearer, LPN News, Skegness. So there was my report yesterday from HMS Eden, one of the new austerity-class vessels that the Royal Navy has brought into service because of their increased presence across the globe. Now, one of the continuing topics that I've featured on my programme for quite a long time now, for quite a few months, and I will continue to feature, is the EU and the iniquities of the Nazi-based dictatorship that we now live under here in the UK and across other countries in Europe, 28 countries in total. The latest bit of nonsense to come from the unelected commission, which is headed up by the 28-member Politburo, who control everything. They're not elected by us. The 700-odd members of the European Parliament that you do elect have no say whatsoever. It's the Commission that produce all the legislation, that produce all the laws that are then sent down to the member states. That Commission, once again, is unelected. You have no say over it. And the MPs in the European Parliament have the option to petition to give any objections to any laws or legislation that comes from the Commission. In other words, they have no say whatsoever in what happens to you or I, or any of the other 500 million people who live under this dictatorship and are ruled by this unelected Nazi Politburo. So the latest thing that's come down from the EU is the power of your vacuum cleaner. Now, from Monday, vacuum cleaners that use more than 1600 watts can no longer be sold in stores in the EU. The European Union rule is intended to improve energy efficiency. Next year, the EU will consider other appliances such as mobile phones and hairdryers. This will obviously have a massive knock-on effect to families who will find themselves restricted to a much smaller number of items that they can choose from, if choice is something that they are actually going to be getting. This report actually comes from CNN, and I found it quite refreshing to actually have something from CNN that kind of made sense. The EU police are not about to take your vacuum cleaner away from you, so stop worrying. But yet last Monday marked the day that super powerful vacuum cleaners that use more than 1600 watts, they can no longer be sold in stores in the EU, nor manufactured in EU plants. This should be of no shock to anyone. The rule, intended to improve energy efficiency, was agreed 5 years ago, and manufacturers have reacted accordingly. So all this was done, dusted 5 years ago before you even heard about it. They may not like it. Dyson, for one, is looking for a judicial review of the new rule, though it has complied with it. European consumers are used to this. New wattage rules have already been in effect for light bulbs. There's only certain types of light bulbs that you're allowed now, and we should really be hearing the sound of "I Want to Break Free" by Queen. And Neil Foster should be wearing stockings, suspenders, and a leather skirt, and frankly, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing him in that. But
efficient Hoover, it doesn't suck at all.
this incredibly quiet Hoover you see behind me is actually 1800 watts in power, and it's doing a fantastic job, and I'm genuinely impressed. It's good that I didn't have to lift my feet up, because that is a real bane when you sat watching the TV.
It doesn't suck anymore.
It doesn't suck anymore. Thank you for that demonstration, Neil. I really appreciate that. So that was one of those so-called high-power vacuum cleaners at 1800 watts. It's believed that there is a misconception that if you have a high voltage vac, that also means there's a lot of power to suck dust. The EU spokesperson, Marlene Holzner, told us last week, dismissing endless columns of ink in Britain, that we will have to vacuum for longer periods, hence use more electricity to clean our homes. Well, it would seem logical that if it takes you twice as long to clean your carpet because the vacuum cleaner that you're using is half as powerful, then surely you should use twice the amount of electricity. But how would I know? I'm just a simple broadcaster and presenter. Vacuum cleaners will also have those little A to G charts on them, so we know how much they cost us to run. Although that changes all the time as well, because the tariffs and the electricity bills that we have are constantly fluctuating anyway. There's also new rules on performance and noise levels. Outdoor vacs, wet and dry vacs, and industrial vacs are exempt from all the new rules for now. But that did not make much news in Britain. Not that the EU is stopping there. The wattage of vacuums will be lowered to a maximum of 900 watts by 2017. So your maximum at the moment will be 1600 watts. So that vacuum cleaner that Neil brought in there is actually illegal. We have an illegal vacuum cleaner. It's 1800 watts. Well, by 2017, that maximum will have halved to 900 watts. The current limit of 1600 watts is just a temporary pause in the way to even more energy efficiency. Next year, the EU will start to talk about putting other appliances on the list. Lawn mowers, mobile phones, hair dryers, kettles. Watch out for the British headlines on that one. EU blows its stack. EU boils over. Brussels stresses there is no formal or informal list, and there's no guarantee new rules to lower the wattage on smaller appliances will be adapted. But the goal here is greater energy efficiency, so they say. The EU hopes to meet about a third of its power reduction targets in the coming years, simply by reducing energy use by appliances. And it is finding steps to cut unnecessary power, and it sees this as a less painful step in the way to that goal. So you're going to be restricted even further, not just on the wattage of vacuum cleaner that you can choose, but you'll also have other appliances which will have their wattages and therefore their power and capabilities reduced. But we've seen this in car engines. We've seen them get smaller, lighter, and which would, at one point, have led to them being less powerful. However, clever engineering has meant that these things can perform to the same standards, if not better, than their older previous models. So are we going to see this innovation across appliances in the future, or will we just have to get used to having weaker, less powerful and therefore less functional appliances in our home? There is a way to stop this, and that is to not comply. Don't go and buy anything new. I know it's a big step and it's not something that we find easy, but why do we buy new stuff when the stuff that we've got works pretty well and does the job that it's supposed to do effectively all these years on? But why do we need something new? Well, because we're told that early adoption and consumption is the way to be happy. Clearly, that's not the case. The way to be happy is to be happy in yourself, to be doing your best at whatever it is you do on a day-to-day basis. And also, Make sure you love and care for those around you. That's the way to be happy. Buying stuff doesn't achieve happiness. It simply gives you that temporary buzz. Gives you a little bit of a buzz, like, oh, I've got something new, I've got something new. But that doesn't last, and you need to get it again and again and again. This story about the elderly in the Times here that Neil was talking about, old people going into care homes only as a last resort. Now, this is something that's fairly close to my family. My mother, who's now retired, was the manager of a care home, and I know she's very active still in campaigning for the rights and for the care of the elderly, and for the right for the elderly people to get premium care that every human being is entitled to, and that they all should receive just out of plain dignity. I found this quite shocking, but also underneath it is a much smaller story, which I think has a much wider and a much more of an impact. This story is about elderly stranded in hospital, bed blocking, or being forced to stay in hospital longer than necessary, maybe to end up being put on the Liverpool care pathway, or just, starved and dehydrated and left in their own urine and feces in a hospital bed for hours on end, or days in some cases. Hundreds of older people have been left stranded in hospital because of delays to adaptations to their homes, new figures from a charity suggest. This is only a suggestion. Patients who need grab rails, ramps and other changes to help them return to their homes spend nearly a month longer in hospital, Age UK said. The charity has called for all new houses to be designed so that stair lifts and ground floor showers can easily be added. So this is now bringing this less choice and more standardisation of homes, unless of course you can afford to build your own off plan and you can have it exactly as you want them, but then of course there's a wealth gap. This would cost house builders £1,500, but could save taxpayers money if people avoided hip fractures, which cost £12,000 to treat, or £26,000 a year in care homes. Caroline Abrahams, charity director for Age UK, said, quote, ensuring all new housing can easily adapted would save the country millions and help end the nonsense of older people lingering for long periods in hospital because of delays fitting adaptations. Building all new homes to higher accessibility standards would cost a little more today, but it would pay off hugely tomorrow, and both older people and the NHS would substantially gain. Only 3% of homes meet accessibility standards, yet many councils have cut the budget for adapting homes and others fail to coordinate properly with hospitals, the charity says. Well, all new homes is one thing. That's the sort of thing that can be worked into plans. But what about existing homes, and what about existing government buildings? Now, I came out of the RAF in 2010, and I can assure you that across the military, the vast majority of buildings are accessibility standard, and they've invested a heck of a lot of money making sure that doors are widened, ramps are put in, grab rails are put in, and that all new builds and a lot of existing buildings are accessible for the disabled. Now, apart from those that have been injured in conflict, disabled soldiers are very few but far between in active service. So one has to ask, why are these facilities being made available to the disabled? Well, because they have to be compliant. However, that isn't the case across all government buildings. When I was at an anti-ATOS demonstration over the winter, I was at the Norwich ATOS location, which was up on the second floor of an inner city building, which was an office block, which was used by many other businesses. There was one lift, and to access that lift you had to go down 3 stairs, across an entrance lobby and up 3 steps to get to the lift. Now obviously if you're in a wheelchair, or if you have several other mobility issues, then those 3 steps down and 3 up again are going to be a massive hurdle to actually reaching the lift, But then if you do manage to get to the lift, then you'll only be getting your wheelchair in, because anybody else that's with you will have to wait or take the stairs, because the lift itself is that small. Then when you get up there are no automatic doors, so you have to try and negotiate narrow swing doors by yourself. If you're somebody who wants to live independently, well, you'll have to take somebody with you, because you won't be entering that ATOS office anytime soon. And that is a government building. It's one of these enterprise centres. And they're not compliant with their own legislation and with their own rules. So how they can expect people's houses to come up to the same standards, I don't know, when they can't get their own houses in order. This image and this headline is across all of today's papers. This from the Mail: a Britain will be next. Sickening video threat of British jihadist Jihadi John, which I'm not convinced is real. As a second US hostage is beheaded. And as Neil was saying earlier, taking somebody's head off with the type of implement that this person here is supposed to have used would be incredibly, if not incredibly difficult, if not nigh on impossible. So this is the image. You are to be scared, as we demonstrated at the top of the show. Be afraid, be scared. Remember, it's not just foreigners now. We have to be scared of Britons as well. No big image, but the headline is still there. Jihadists will behead Britain next. The Independent, once again. British captive shown in ISIS video as second American is beheaded. And this is Stephen Skotlov, 31, from Miami, was kidnapped by Islamists in Syria in August 2013. So he's on the list. Here we are. Now, for some reason, the Sun has decided to blank out this face, but British jihadi, again, this Jihadi John, which once again I'm not sure about, because you'd never see who this is and you never see them speaking. I thought jihadists were proud and were willing to stand up and be counted and wanted to show the world about the great stuff that they'd done in the name of Islam. However, this chap is obviously more concerned about whether he's going to be able to get home or not. And he's making sure that he's well hidden. Or is he? Is he another asset? The Brit jihadi, I'll behead this Brit next. So once again, be afraid, be scared. Here we are again. I'm back and I'll kill a Brit. And apparently he's going to take the man's head off with that knife. Now, as we were talking about earlier, guillotines need to be very, very well constructed to be able to do the job that they're intended, which is, of course, removing the head and decapitating. It would take several blows with a very large, heavy and very sharp axe to take off somebody's head through the Middle Ages. And we know that in a lot of Middle Eastern countries where Sharia is practiced, that decapitation, removing of hands and feet, etc., is something that has to be carried out by a skilled swordsman and a skilled executioner who has to do it with an incredibly sharp sword, and they have to be very powerful people. So sawing away at the man's neck with that knife is going to take a very long time, and it's not going to happen. There's a lot to get through here in the neck, and if you've got a big neck like me, then it's going to be even harder work. And of course, even the broadsheets, the Daily Telegraph, Britain will be next, warns Jihadi John as he beheads second captive. So there's no difference really between the tabloids and the broadsheets. These are supposed to be for the thinking people, the middle classes, the upper classes and the elites, the broad papers that think and that explain things in detail. And this is for the masses, the proletariat. But of course, there's no difference whatsoever other than the quantity of paper that's used in the production. Once again, what's the point we're making by showing you all these newspapers? The point we're making is that the prostitutes want you to be scared. They need you to be scared so that A, you'll buy their product, and B, they're going to have a lot more product to sell us, and there's going to be a lot, and we're going to be ready and softened up for the next event, the next false flag, the next 9/11, the next 7/7, the next Woolwich bombing, or Woolwich beheading. We're going to be ready for it, and it's going to be, oh, it's happened again. They warned us though, didn't they? Aren't they clever? We've become reliant on the state for so much. Food, healthcare, housing, the very clothes we stand up in some cases, and our living. Yet independence is something that's frowned upon if you take yourself away, and it's not just here in the UK, but across many Western countries. If you're somebody who likes solitude, if you're somebody who likes to take themselves away, then you're seen as weird. You're an outcast. You're not normal if you don't want to live in the bustling urban hives and hellholes that we call our cities and towns in 2014. Not pleasant places to be, places of violence, of crime, of extreme pressure, tension, and a lot of people live their day-to-day lives in an incredible amount of fear. Whereas the elites, however, and when we talk about the elites, we're talking about the very rich and the very powerful. And these people that are powerful are the ones that we place there. So they're doing this with our consent. So some would say we've only got ourselves to blame. I, however, say that there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And we have the power because we, if we want to, can walk away, and we can take their power with us because we give it to them, and we should be able to take it away. Now, they've made it increasingly difficult for us to take away their power with the electoral political systems that we have in place and the corporate systems that we have in place. However, there is something we can do, and that is, once again, withdrawing our consent. Don't buy their products, don't use their services, don't use their facilities. Fend for yourself, provide for yourself. Look after yourself and make sure that you and your family are safe and secure, and that you and your family know how to look after themselves and know how to maintain their own health. Because if you can maintain your own health, then you've no need to go and use one of those dangerous places that we call an NHS hospital. Now, I, for one, used to be somebody who was proud of the NHS and was proud of what it stood for. And in some respects, I still am. But I'm also warning you that a lot of the bygone era of the high quality work that the NHS was doing has gone. It's been sold off, it's been broken up bit by bit, and a lot of those facilities are now being handed over to private partnerships and private corporations who are running these places for profit. Hospitals should be places where one is taken to get better. However, we're finding more and more that these are places where people are used as guinea pigs. People find themselves in an extremely dire situations, not because the staff are incompetent and not because the staff are being evil. They're in these situations because the staff are not able to cope with the pressure that's being put on them. When one person has to provide for the welfare of 6 to 8 people who are very, very unwell and are at their lowest point in their lives maybe, then that is an incredible amount of pressure for one person to be watching over them, to be dealing with an emergencies, to be dealing with the routine of handing out medication and monitoring. That's a lot to do, and especially if these people are under a lot of pressure and are tired and are finding themselves financially stretched as well. But also something that concerns me personally is the almost complete loss of friendship from a member of NHS staff who had been talking to me about some of the things that she saw wrong in the NHS, until the day she came and spoke to me very briefly and said, "I can't talk to you anymore." She was incredibly scared, and whilst she had not been individually targeted, she felt so scared, and she felt that her career was under so much threat that she couldn't talk to me anymore because she felt that maybe somebody would find out and she would be in incredible amount of trouble. Now, when you're a member of staff working under that kind of pressure, as well as the normal day-to-day pressures and difficulties that nursing and care staff see every day, that just cannot add to the quality of life, and something's got to give. And unfortunately, that meant that she wasn't able to talk to me anymore about the iniquities that she saw going on around her in the NHS. However, it does mean that we have to talk to more people, and we have to find out from people themselves. And I've carried reports of people who've fought having relatives, etc., being put on the Liverpool Care Pathway. Liverpool Care Pathway was something that was set up to make the last few days of a terminally ill patient's life, to make their life as good and as comfortable as possible. That was then, that's been turned into effectively assisted euthanasia. We are seeing thousands of people, predominantly elderly people, dying every day because of what is in effect neglect in our NHS hospitals. They're not fed, they're not cleaned, they're not even given the basics of water for hours, if not days on end. These people are then left nil by mouth to die agonising, slow, painful, and often very confused deaths because of Alzheimer's and dementia. Once again, Alzheimer's, something that can have its symptoms lessened and its impact lessened on a person's life by changes of diet, by simply adding coconut oil, etc., into a person's diet, can have a positive impact on somebody with Alzheimer's because it feeds the brain the cholesterol it needs. The vast majority of the grey stuff up here is cholesterol, and the body has to get the replacement cholesterol from somewhere. So you need to be taking it in, but you need to be careful which cholesterol you're taking in, and coconut oil is possibly one of the best sources of good cholesterol that is needed for the brain. So if you or somebody that you know has a relative or somebody that you care for has Alzheimer's, try starting to add a large amount, well, I say large amount, about 6 tablespoons of coconut oil into the diet. Now, I'm not a physician, this should not be taken as medical advice, and I'm not trying to be a doctor or anything here. I'm simply passing on information that I've discovered, which have shown positive side effects to somebody with Alzheimer's, which is simply adding coconut oil to their diet. So we've gone from EU vacuum cleaners to coconut oil, as I've had a ramble on. Another one here is, this is another target of my wrath on many occasions, and this is vaccination. It's something that you'll hear about a lot on this network and across the networks that we are affiliated with, which are wakeradio.co.uk, Awake Radio US, 1800online.weebly.com, that's my network, shaziz.com, thesechangingtimes.ning.com, and many, many more. There's so many adding all the time. And for that, we're really grateful, and it's fantastic that more and more people are coming alongside and working with us together to spread the word of truth, and also the fact that there are positive solutions out there. That was just one quick tip I gave you about coconut oil. We should all be adding it into our diets anyway. Pharmaceuticals and vaccines then. This is coming from vactruth.com. Vaccines are, quote, safe and effective. How do they do it? Vaccine horror stories are everywhere these days. Stories of young girls fainting in the doctor's offices after receiving the HPV vaccines. Stories of mothers taking a healthy child for a round of shots to their paediatrician returning home with a severely sick or dead child. Stories of children receiving the chickenpox vaccine and experiencing severe cases of chickenpox months later. A 1 in 50 rate of autism in the United States. Increasing autoimmune disorders, seizures, allergies, and many other illnesses and disorders. Despite all this, your paediatrician, health officials, governments, and pharmaceutical companies proclaim their vaccines are very safe. Did you ever wonder how they derive how they arrive at such faulty conclusions? Well, I've wondered, and I think I know, but let's find out and see what this article's got to say. Any trained scientist or statistician understands that you want to use a null hypothesis to disprove a possible causational relationship between two correlated events. The null hypothesis in this case would be there is no causal connection between vaccinations and other alleged adverse short-term and long-term side effects. If we were going to test this hypothesis, I would randomly sample research subjects. A large sample size, perhaps 100,000, would help exclude other factors, and divide the subjects into two groups. One group will get the vaccine, and the other group would receive a saline shot. Both groups would then be monitored for at least 4 weeks to observe whether short-term side effects were more prevalent in the vaccine group or the placebo group. To determine whether or not there is a causal link between vaccinations and long-term medical conditions would be a little more difficult. Nonetheless, if one group of subjects has received a placebo and the other has received the vaccine, it would be possible to mail a questionnaire to randomly selected patients who've chosen to immunise their children and to an equal-sized group of those who haven't. A phone interview could also take place. This would be a good starting point to see whether there are differences in the long-term health and development of vaccinated children versus that of non-vaccinated children. If no significant differences are found between the two groups in either the short-term or long-term, then the pro-vaccine factions can rejoice because they've disproven the anti-vaccinators' claims and proved that the vaccine in question does not cause short-term or long-term complications. If researchers wanted to know the truth about vaccines' effects, it would be easily enough to discover. Let's take a look at what methodology the pharmaceutical industries use to obtain the results that they desire. That's a key phrase, obtaining the results that they desire. Here it is, as explained in the package inserts of the hepatitis B vaccine by GlaxoSmithKline. This is what it says. 10 double-blind studies involving 2,252 subjects showed no significant difference in the frequency or severity of adverse experiences between Engerex B and plasma-derived vaccines. In 36 clinical studies, a total of 13,495 doses of Engerex B were administered to 5,071 healthy adults and children who were initially seronegative for hepatitis B markers and healthy neonates. All subjects were monitored for 4 days post-administration. What the pharmaceutical company should have done is inject one group with the vaccine and the other group with a non-vaccine placebo, i.e. saline. What the pharmaceutical company did instead was inject one group with the hepatitis B vaccine and the other group with a different vaccine. When they monitored both groups and found that the recipients of their vaccine had, quote, no significant difference in the frequency or severity of adverse experiences as compared to the recipients of other vaccines, which tells us nothing, really. Imagine McDonald's touting their Big Macs as being no more lethal than the Whopper. This is exactly what the pharmaceutical company has done here. They've avoided the real question about adverse reactions to vaccines by announcing that their vaccine causes no more adverse reactions than other vaccines. But make no mistake about it, adverse reactions occurred in both groups. Let's take a closer look at the package inserts of various drug companies and the vaccines they manufacture. More importantly, let's look at how the pharmaceutical companies manipulate safety results. Sanofi Pasteur and the HIV vaccine. In a randomized double-blind US clinical trial, ACT-HIB vaccine was given concomitantly with DTP to more than 5,000 infants, and hepatitis B vaccine was given with DTP to a similar number. In this large study, deaths due to sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS, and other causes were observed, but were not different in the two groups. In the first 48 hours following immunisation, 2 definite and 3 possible seizures were observed after ACTIB vaccine and DTP, in comparison with none after hepatitis B vaccine and DTP. In order for us to know how safe the HIB vaccine is, the vaccine should have been compared to a placebo. Only then would we know how safe the vaccine truly is. But in order to muddy the results, not only did they not compare the HIB vaccine to a placebo, but they combined the HIB vaccine with another vaccine and then tested it against 2 other combined vaccines. Imagine a drug company testing the safety of infant Tylenol by mixing it with another drug and then comparing it to a mixture of 2 other drugs. How would you ever be able to tell whether Tylenol is safe to give our children? Well, it's not, is it? None of these things are. The stuff that they contain, the aluminium, the thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative, so it's got mercury in it, and the human diploid cells, which still carry the DNA of the original donor fetus or human being or baby that was killed, murdered in fact, back in the 1960s to get these cells. Well, no, it was a planned termination, but they harvested the human diploid fetal cells from the aborted baby, or sorry, murdered human being. This goes on to talk about how the testing was flawed and how the companies were able to get the results they wanted by simply tinkering with the testing. And of course, we're all still part of the testing. We're all guinea pigs for these companies. The final stage of testing is to put it out into society, put it out amongst the target audience, if you like, and see how many it kills. If it kills a lot, that's bad. Take it back because we're going to lose money. If it doesn't kill too many, then that's okay. We can keep selling it and we can make some profit. And if it doesn't kill anybody or hardly anybody at all, that's great, we're quids in. The pharmaceutical companies don't care though, that's the basic message. They're in it for the money, they're in it for profit, and that's their right if they're companies. But don't do it at the cost of human lives. Don't do it at the cost of children's entire opportunities. Their lives are taken away from them by these dangerous, dangerous vaccinations, which cause horrendous injuries, both mental and physical, or even, in some cases, death. That's not something that we should be looking to help and assist. So, once again, if you get involved in purchasing these products from these companies, then you're simply allowing them to continue their research on you and on others around you, which inevitably causes the death of somebody, and potentially somebody who's close to you. We'll be coming back to the topic of vaccines. We'll be coming back to the topic of the EU, of course, in programmes to come. And with a couple of minutes to go, I want to say thank you very much to the production team here at LPN, Live Pulse News, for providing the facilities and the production work so that we can get on air, so that we can talk to you, and so that we can be in vision. I do a daily show which starts at 6 o'clock called 1800 Online, The End Game. It's available Monday through Friday on the Awake Radio Network, 1800 Online, and across the other networks as well. Tuesdays and Thursdays I start at 7 p.m. and is purely in sound on the radio. We pack a lot into that hour though. Here on the television we're able to do a lot more, and we're able to provide you with a lot more entertainment as well as news and as well as views. And as that little piece about the Navy, taken from genuine stories. Those were genuine stories that I was bringing to you, and that was genuine information about a genuine former Sea Lord. However, we just decided to just inject that little bit of humour, just to make it just a little bit more entertaining for you. This show, as along with all the others, will be available to watch again from the LPN website, livepulsenews.com, but also on our YouTube channel. And these programmes are also are shown as part of the Awake Radio YouTube channel. And if I can give a quick plug for my own programme, 1800 Online The Endgame is available as a podcast, and all you have to do is go along to the podcast archive page on our website, which is 1800online.weebly.com. Once again, thanks to Neil Foster for his contribution, and listen out for him Tuesdays and Thursdays when he does Reality Bites, which is all about his news and views, and then Reality Rocks on Fridays, where Neil shares his taste in music with you, as well as some news and views as well, but it's mostly about the music. And on Mondays, listen out for Cloud 7, which is a program that I broadcast on another network, but Awake Radio carries it on Monday. And that program, I've handed on the baton to the next generation. Connor Taylor-Shearer, my son, who's been producing that program for several weeks now, has taken the helm and produces, researches, presents, engineers, and does it all himself from our studios. And he does that on a Monday between 7 and 8, and that's called Cloud 7, Play Music from SoundCloud. And it's just a little oasis of peace and calm and away from reality to start your week. And Neil rounds it off with another break from the news and from the talk on a Friday with Reality Rocks. The schedule is growing, it's getting filled up faster and faster with more international hosts, presenters, producers, and more live programming is coming on stream all the time across all of the networks and across the entire spectrum when it comes together. So thank you for taking the time to watch. Stay tuned for more great news and information coming to you on Awake Radio or whichever network you're listening to this on and watching it on. And I hope to hear from you tomorrow when I'll be presenting my show from 7, and I'll see you again on Friday from 5 p.m. GMT. And for the first time, I'd like to finish the show with the video that I put together, which is my opening and closing titles and credits, but now not just in sound, but in vision as well. So, as always, take care, and to whichever deity you give your faith, may they bring you peace.
1, 2, 3, 4. We're so glad to see so many of you lovely people here tonight. We would especially like to welcome all the representatives.
GCHQ, Cheltenham.
Who have chosen to join us here in the Palace Hotel Ballroom at this time. We certainly hope you all enjoy the show. And remember, people, that no matter who you are and what you do to live, thrive, and survive, there's still some things that make us all the same. You, me, them, everybody. Everybody. Everybody needs somebody.
Alan Taylor-Shearer presents The Endgame in association with Live Pulse News and the 1800 Online Network. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Productions are a small independent sound recording company based in rural Hertfordshire. We specialise in creating content for all your podcasting needs, whether it be field recordings, vox pops, or capturing the atmosphere during social events. Editing is a very time-consuming job, so Spamhead Productions are on hand to take away some of the burden for you. Just advise us on how you'd like your content to sound, and we will do the rest. We can even help you design and manage a website for your podcast too. Visit us now, spamheadproductions.weebly.com. That's spamheadproductions.weebly.com. Online is brought to you by Kings Lynn Online. www.kingslynnonline.com for everything that's good about Kings Lynn.